What does it look like when a civilization commits suicide? Is it with a bang, a revolution, a war? Or is it something stranger, something quieter? A slow, collective sigh of exhaustion, a relinquishing of a millennia-old inheritance, not with a fight, but with a weary, self-loathing apology. This is the subject of one of the most controversial and consequential books of the 21st century, The Strange Death of Europe: Immigration, Identity, Faith, by Douglas Murray. Murray is not a fringe figure. He is an Oxford-educated intellectual, a writer for The Spectator, and a man from the heart of the British establishment. But he has become its chief heretic. This book is not a policy paper. It is an elegy, a forensic and unflinching autopsy of a civilization that, he argues, is in the process of killing itself. It is a story of mass immigration without assimilation, of a loss of faith in its own foundations, and of a guilt so profound it has become a death wish. If you are comfortable, if you believe the modern narrative about a vibrant, diverse new Europe, what you are about to hear will be deeply unsettling. But listen, because whether he is right or catastrophically wrong, Murray gives voice to the silent, seething anxiety of millions. The two fatal wounds: mass migration and lost faith. Murray argues Europe is dying from two simultaneous and related fatal wounds. The first is the most obvious and the one we are not allowed to discuss honestly: mass immigration. He is not talking about the legal, controlled immigration of the past. He is talking about the unprecedented wave after wave of mass migration, primarily from the Middle East and Africa, that began in the post-war period and accelerated dramatically in the 21st century. The numbers, he claims, are so vast and so rapid that assimilation became impossible. Instead, Europe adopted a policy of multiculturalism, which he reframes not as the celebration of diversity, but as the celebration of separatism. The message to new arrivals was, you do not need to become like us. In fact, our culture is not worth joining. Maintain your own. This created parallel societies, and within those societies, Murray contends, often festered values fundamentally at odds with the liberal, secular, post-Enlightenment values of Europe. Attitudes towards women, gays, Jews, and free speech that the host nations were too timid, too guilty to challenge. But the second wound is the deeper one: Europe's loss of faith. And he means this in both the religious and the secular sense. Christianity, the bedrock of European culture, art, law, and ethics for 1,500 years, has collapsed. And what did Europe put in its place? Nothing. A vacuum. It lost faith in its own religion, and then, catastrophically, it lost faith in its secular replacements, in nationalism, in patriotism, in the very stories and myths that bind people together. The European elite, he says, now believes in little more than the catechism of guilt. Guilt for colonialism, guilt for the world wars, guilt for its own success. This guilt is not a passing sentiment. It is the only remaining article of faith, and it is a faith that demands penance. That penance is the opening of its borders and the abdication of its identity. The mechanisms of suicide: guilt, lies, and the betrayal of the elites. So how does this suicide play out in the day-to-day? Murray lays bare three brutal mechanisms. First, the cult of guilt. He argues that a people who feel only shame for their history cannot defend it, cannot perpetuate it, and certainly cannot ask others to join it. This guilt is weaponized to silence dissent. To question the pace or scale of immigration is immediately branded racist, the modern heresy. So the most important debate a society can have is shut down before it can begin. The conversation is strangled in its crib. Second, the web of lies. The entire project, he claims, is built on a foundation of falsehoods that everyone is forced to repeat. We were told mass immigration was necessary for the economy. Yet, he presents data suggesting the fiscal benefits are negligible or negative, and the downward pressure on wages for the working class is real. We were told these were all refugees. But Murray meticulously distinguishes between the genuine refugee, a specific legal category, and the millions of economic migrants who he argues are exploiting a dysfunctional system, often with the aid of NGOs he describes as having a quasi-religious fervor for ferrying. The biggest lie of all, the mantra, that diversity is our strength. He doesn't just question this, he eviscerates it. He asks, is it a strength when it leads to ghettoization, social tension, and a collapse of community trust? He argues that what binds a society is not diversity, but commonality, a shared language, history, and set of assumptions. And Europe, he says, is systematically destroying its commonality. The cultural consequence, the replacement of a people. This leads to Murray's most explosive claim, one that taps into the darkest fears of our time. He argues this is not merely a social change, but a demographic and cultural replacement. Through a combination of plummeting native birth rates and mass immigration, the very people who created Europe, their descendants, are being not just supplemented, but replaced. He cites figures and projections showing that in major cities and eventually entire nations, the native population will become a minority in their own ancestral homelands. This, he says, is not a conspiracy theory. It is a mathematical reality. And it is unprecedented in human history without a conquest. What happens to the Louvre, to the Sistine Chapel, to the works of Shakespeare and Goethe, when a Europe that no longer feels they are its own inheritance? When the connecting thread of memory and meaning has been severed, they become mere artifacts, tourist attractions in a continent that has become a museum, a Disneyland of its former self, curated by a people who have no living connection to the civilization that built it. The new Europe, he fears, will be a rootless, atomized space defined by consumerism and a hollowed-out tolerance that is too weak to defend the very principles it claims to hold dear. Murray offers no easy solutions. In fact, he offers almost no solutions at all. The book is a diagnosis, not a prescription. He believes the momentum is too great, the will to live too weak to reverse the tide. The strange death is that there will be no epic battle, no last stand, just a slow, steady, bureaucratic unraveling. A civilization that chose to feel guilty for existing, and in doing so, chose to cease to exist. The final question he leaves us with is the most haunting of all. Is it possible to be a citizen of nowhere? Can a civilization built on a specific, deep, and rich foundation survive when it denies that foundation entirely? Or does it simply become a territory, a mere piece of geography, waiting for a new, more confident people to write their own story upon it? Douglas Murray's elegy suggests the answer is already written, and the last sigh of Europe is not one of defiance, but of relief.